Are you ready? Let's go!
Don't you sometimes just want to talk about everything? You know, there's days when you can just talk about anything. Need to sit back and chat about nothing at all? Nothing But Julie, coming at you with fun and creative topics and interviews.
Did you hear Julie's podcast? She's got the greatest topics.
Come join the chat about everything, anything, and nothing. So unwind and tune in to Nothing But Julie. Great topics and cool interviews with some pretty awesome people. And now, without further delay, here's Nothing But Julie.
Hello and welcome to Nothing But Julie. This is Julie Schrager and I am here with the wonderful Rhonda Marie. Hey, Rhonda.
Hi, Julie.
What is cooking?
Not much. Just, recovering from the week. Well, actually, I didn't do anything over the weekend, so I can't even say I'm recovering. I think I'm just missing that I took the weekend to force myself to relax.
That's good. I mean, so you have to force yourself. Do you feel guilty about relaxing?
I do. So, like we have a small business. We have two small businesses. And so, and then I have the horses. And so, of course, barrel racing is pretty much stopped right now. And so pretty much I've always had something going, like I'm going to a race on the weekends. I'm going to set up my TheraPlate for the horses at an event. And so then I go to markets, of course, with the shirts on the weekends. So I have to force myself to say, you know what, you have to just take a day and do nothing.
Well, you know what? I've been there for a few years now where, there used to be a time when, I was busy all the time, my son and sports and school and this and that. And it's just, it came to an abrupt halt once, he was done with high school and
right.
And so now it's like, that whole empty nester syndrome, but I'm not an empty nester. He's here living with us, but he's never home because he's always working.
Right.
But my weekends came to just an abrupt halt to where I was busy all the time. Or when I was working, I only had the weekends to run errands or to see a friend or,
right.
And now it's, COVID. We're kind of like screwed, but
right. I feel like COVID has forced a lot of people who are, because like I had the same thing, my son's 20. And so he only graduated 2 years ago and he played sports in school. And so it was always like, we always had something to go do. And then all of a sudden I just had nothing. And then I had, work and we started these small businesses. But I really think that the COVID has forced a lot of people who are like workaholics or to learn how to just be at home.
I have to tell you with what you just said, the People's Choice Awards, they were on yesterday and I just had no idea. I was flipping through the channels and I saw that it was coming on. I'm like, oh, okay. And I am always aware of when award shows are on. I'm like an awards show junkie. And I just think that like everything has changed with me with like certain things with COVID that like I'm so unaware of some of the things that are going on. And so anyway, it was right before it started, they were doing, like those red carpet interviews. And there was this woman, and I forget her name. I believe that she is on some kind of like a show. I feel so bad. I don't even know who she is. But she started talking and the woman that was doing the interview was asking, how have you been, coping? She has a new podcast and, new as in starting, I think it started 6 months ago. And the woman who was interviewing her was asking, how have you coped with COVID? And she said, well, this is the first time that I've actually really been out and putting on makeup and getting dressed. And she said, and I'm using her words. So she said, I am socially inept and I don't like to socialize. I'm a homebody and I'm comfortable. She said, so when COVID hit and we all had to quarantine, well, go into lockdown rather. She said, I was so excited because I knew that I could just continue being at home and not have to worry about socializing. And then she said, then I think it was the mayor or the governor of her state said, well, we're going to have to do this for like at least 3 more months. And she was jumping for joy because she did not have to socialize or do anything. And I think it made her and it makes people like me and others who don't always love going out or being social. It gives them an excuse now.
It does.
Right?
So I'm super introverted. You know, and I mean, I don't, the part of the business that I hate is the social media stuff and the like selling. I love the designing and the behind the scenes stuff because I don't have to talk with people. But yeah, it's really like my social calendar. It's been nice because if people invite us somewhere, we can just say, you know, that we're not comfortable going out.
Exactly. And you're not. It's not like
No,
you're making an excuse.
I'm not.
Right.
Right. I'm uncomfortable for two reasons. One, I'm not super great in social situations. And I don't want to get sick.
Well, of course. And you know what? I'll tell you, it's funny because there was a time when I couldn't have enough of being out and being with people and
No,
with friends.
I'm with you.
Right. Years and years ago, I mean, it was just like, I think being a mom and working and blah, 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 I just needed an outlet. And so I really looked forward to my weekends and being with people and being able to just get out. But I don't know if it's age or if it's whatever it is, but I realized, no, let me rephrase that. When I realized that I really was not the most social person was about 2 years ago. I was at a friend's house and she was having a party. And I just was like, ugh, I just do not want to be here. It had nothing to do with the people or the interaction. I just was like, I just felt that I don't love small talk. I prefer you being more real, right? I
Yes.
prefer you
Yes.
being more real and having a
I don't
real,
want to. I don't want to talk about the weather. I don't want to.
right.
I want to. I will have a real meaningful conversation, but I'm not good at that kind of small talk kind of stuff.
A lot of people are good at it and a lot of people actually make a living doing it. But
Yes.
it was at that party where I realized it was like, ding, I do not want to be here. I do not want to socialize. I do not want to make small talk. And then I had a few drinks and I started feeling better and more social. And, but at the end of the day, I realized that it's like I was really forcing myself to be a part of this, you know, party. And I really could care less. But then on the flip side, I would complain about not going
Not
out and
being
not
invited.
well, no, not being invited.
I do the same thing.
No, it wasn't. Well, yeah, I mean, I guess not being invited, but just in general, if like I said, I'm really bored, I really want to do something, and then on the flip side, I go out and I'm like, I want to be home. So
Yes.
right. So I've realized that, first of all, my social circle has become very, very small, and it's taken me a long time to get to that point to have a smaller social circle. And I think that, when you're younger, you can't help but be friends with a lot of people. And I use that friends term very loosely because,
Right.
like
because a lot of times it's not like my son, he's 20 and he has a lot of friends. Him and his girlfriend, they just have so many friends. And he's like, well, you have a lot of friends on Facebook. And I said, yeah, but I said, honestly, some of those people are just like, I don't really know them. I said, my actual friends circle is very small.
Yeah.
I said, the number of people that I would invite to come stay at my home or, I would stay at their home or, I'm interested in actively trying to maintain a relationship with them. It's very small.
Sure. And you know what else? First of all, when it comes to Facebook friends, we all know that that does not mean friends. I mean, a lot of the
Right.
people that I'm quote friends with are either acquaintances or I want to be friends with them because they have a certain business, things like
Right.
that. But I realize that now it's more important. And I know that you've heard, it's more about quality than quantity.
Yes.
I was saying before that, when you have children, you wind up making friendships with people who are on his teams or,
Right.
in
They have kids
sports.
the same age.
Exactly. Or
Yeah.
like when he goes over to a friend's house, you wind up becoming friends with them. That it's funny how those friendships, again, using that term loosely, those kind of dissipated as the sports dragged on. Well, didn't drag on, just kind of came to an end. Like if my son was done with baseball and wanted to try basketball. And it also depended on the different friends he made. If he was no longer friends with this kid, then, I was not talking to the parents. And that's
Right.
just kind of, it became acceptable, no big deal. But now, I'm older and I just don't care as much as I
I,
used to.
I think that's it. And I recently read a book, and I saw one of her books in Barnes and Noble, and it was something like How to Get Your Shit Together, and she calls it like a satire self-help book.
Mm.
There's really helpful information in there, but she's very funny about it. And so I just wanted to read it because I thought I'd like the style of writing. Well, I ended up buying all of her books,
Oh.
and the first book that she wrote was The Life-Changing Magic of Not Giving an F. And she based it like kind of like a Marie Kondo thing. And she talked about how as you get older, you stop caring about so many things because
Yeah.
you just don't have the energy. And as I was reading that book, I just thought, this is so true. Like, there are just so many things I just can't be bothered to care about them anymore.
Well, that's just it. The whole, like you used the word bother. I have to agree with you there. I think that as you've gone through the rigmarole of the bullshit with people,
Yes.
I wanted to tell you, it's funny that you mentioned that because just the other day, my sister, um, told me about a book called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck.
Yes.
Right? And that book is by Mark Manson. And I thought that I had heard of it before. But then she also told me about a book called The Four Agreements. And from what have you heard of that one?
Yes, I actually read that
What'd you think? Because
at the beginning of this year.
I just got it on my Kindle and I was going to start tonight. Did you like it?
I did like it. So I'm not super religious, and there's some religious tenets in that.
Mm.
But the foundation of it, and like I've read several like Christian books that are they use the Christianity, but there's also other really good stuff in it. And so the Four Agreements, it's talking about like being your most authentic self.
Right. And that's not easy.
It's not.
It's not easy. And my sister recommended these books to me because, and I don't know if I mentioned this to you or if I was talking about it in my single podcast, but it was about taking things personally. And Marlo, my sister and I are alike in some ways, and we're very, very different in others. And so my sister was like, you take things too personally. And I had said, well, I mean, I know that I definitely take certain things too personally, but I don't take everything personally. Like, how you might not care or give a shit about one thing, but something else might bother you like crazy. It's amazing how your brain works, right? So we spoke about it because we had a little bit of an argument, and then, we resolved it. And she had said to me, that if, it would be a good idea to read these books because I think it's the last chapter of the Four Agreements that talks about not taking things personally.
Yes.
Right. And as we were talking, I said, how don't you take things personally? Like, I don't get that. Like, okay, you were saying before not being invited. I mean, if there was a party down the street from me, I live in Florida, so I live in a community, among a lot of houses, and a friend of mine had a party. She's literally two or three houses down the street from me. And I wasn't invited. It was like the football thing. And how did I know? Well, they're 2-3 houses from me. I could
Right.
hear,
You saw them.
well, I could hear people when I sit in my backyard often to read or to listen to podcasts. And when I went out, I took my dogs out and I could hear all this commotion, whatever. I didn't know what was going. I didn't even care. But then when I took my dog out in the front, like, I don't know, like an hour later, I could see all the cars. And the first thing I was like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, why would you not invite me? You invite me all the time. Like, what? And then I was like, whatever. I'm sure she has her reasons. So that was kind of like what my sister was talking about, not taking things personally. But I have to tell you, there are some things that are meant by other people to, I think, hurt you. And I think
Right.
the secret is to learn not to take it to heart. And that sometimes has been very hard for me. So I do kind of look forward to reading the Four Agreements and the Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. Because I really think I need to learn a little bit more on how to just approach things without giving a shit. For the most part,
Right.
I'm okay, but there are definitely times where it eats me up, and I don't like that feeling. I'd rather not I'd rather not give a shit.
Right. And that's one of the reasons that I read that book, because I had started to, like, I was getting very hurt by a lot of things. Um, and I was like, why do I even care what these people think? Like, so I was in this coaching group for barrel racing, and I started to feel it's very cliquey in there. And I mean, I met some wonderful people from the group that I will remain, friends with and stay in contact with. But, there's many people that I let them all become my friends on all the social media. And then it kind of felt like, when there's a group of like the cool girls and you want to be friends with them, but they just won't quite let you in the group.
You mean like high school?
Yeah, like high school. And so that's what it was feeling like to me. And I was getting very upset about this. And I had also joined a business coaching group and with the same kind of group of people, like they were all led by the same person. And it felt like that in there as well. And so I was like, and I was paying for the honor of being in these groups. And so one day I was just like, you know what? I'm quitting both of those groups. Because I'm a grown ass woman and I don't have to have anybody making me feel like this. And so I did. And, I feel so much better now.
Like
But
almost empowered, right?
yes. And I didn't announce my departure. I didn't like, I think in high school or, younger Rhonda would have had to tell everyone that she was leaving and why, and I would have to kind of like scorch the earth. But I didn't do that. I just quietly left and,
Good for
canceled
you.
my subscriptions. And then a couple people would start to reach out and ask if I was still in the group because they were like, I'm like, I haven't seen you post. I kind of missed you or whatever. And it was then I could weed out like who actually liked me and wanted to have a friendship and who just, kind of befriended me so I could help promote their business or promote their thing.
Yes, I know those. And I'll tell you something. I mean, you're how old are you? Don't tell me that. You're younger than
39.
me. I know. Okay.
39.
Well, I just remember that. So I'm 51.
Are you
And
there, Julie?
yeah, I'm here. Hello. Can you hear me? Uh-oh.
Okay. Are you there?
Oh, yeah. Can you hear me?
Back. Oh, yep.
Oh,
I can
okay.
now. I couldn't there for a second.
Okay.
I'm 39. I'll be 40 in February.
Okay. So I am 51. And I remember when I was maybe your age, something had transpired with my mom and some friends. And I remember saying to her, doesn't this bother you? Like, aren't you like livid? And she turned to me and she said, like a mother would say, only a mother would say this, like, Julie, as I've gotten older, I've become wiser and I just don't give a fuck.
Yes, I think
Just
that's
like
what
that,
it is.
And it's true. But look, she's 80 years old and something recently happened with her and a friend and she was upset about it. But for the most part, she's kind of learned that there's more important stuff going on in this world than these assholes that, you you think that you're friends with. And I think that for some people who are lucky enough, some women who are lucky enough to either be born with or learn at a young age how to deal, with this kind of strife, they're very, very lucky. But then there are some like me, perhaps you, where it takes a while and you have to go through the hurt and the pain to kind of become wiser, right? And just be like, okay, I don't care. And it doesn't mean, see, it was pointed out to me that I am also a very sensitive person. And because I'm sensitive, I'm very passionate. And that's why I get upset about things and I wear my heart on my sleeve. And at a young age, my mom said, you have two choices. One is to change who you are and don't be who you are anymore so you don't get hurt. Or stay who you are, stay true to yourself, and stop expecting. And I'm like, I don't expect. And then I realized, oh my God, I actually do expect. And I didn't realize it. It wasn't until she said this to me, I must have been, I think 16, 17. And so I said, well, I am not going to change who I am because I like who I am, but I have to learn not to expect anything in return. But it didn't work because I still spent years being hurt and sad and whatever. But now it's kind of like, all right, I am not, that I'm so cognizant of it, I will not allow myself to make specific decisions. Like I see the red flags now more than ever before because I'm aware.
Right. And I think that's it. Like I'm very much the same way. And it's not, I think what it is I just expect what I'm giving. Mm-hmm. So if I'm giving this level of friendship or this level of honesty and loyalty to someone, I expect it back. And then it's just, sometimes it's not reciprocated. And so, but I think it's like you said, it's the being aware, just knowing.
Yes. But it's a great feeling once you become aware. And I think I was aware, but I just kind of left it on the shelf and just said, because I always would give other people a second or a third or a fourth chance, yes. Always thinking that, well, there's got to be good in them. And then, and I have to tell you, and I know that you don't know my sister personally, but from Gish, mm-hmm. But my sister is really great with advice. And I go to her often because I know that she'll set me straight, and right. Set me down like the right path. And she's the one that said that you always give people all these chances and you always wind up getting hurt. And you need to see the red flags. And I said, the thing of it is I do see the red flags, but I just ignore them because good in people. And I know that at some point I'm going to see it. And sometimes it just would never come. And I think that when you realize that you shouldn't expect from people, but also that you shouldn't change who you are just to get people to like you. It's so like, what's the word I'm looking for? When you feel so not powerful, but it's like a weight being lifted off of you, when you come to those realizations, right?
Yes. Yeah. And I think and I feel like it's a cycle throughout my life because I know this in my logical brain, but I forget it. And then it's like I fall back into the same pattern. And so, like I said, recently I kind of had this, like I was not being myself in some groups of people that I was associating with. And so I was afraid to share my opinion on things and I would just stay kind of quiet. And I was like, well, this is not really who I am. And so if they like this version of me, they don't really like me. And so, my boyfriend pointed it out. He was like, you're very like buttoned down in this group. Like, he's like I'm not afraid really to call someone out and say, hey, well, like, that's not what you said previously, if they're being contradictory or, I ask them for clarification. I'm pretty good at doing that. And so I had just stopped doing that in this group. And so we were being given advice where one week the advice was one thing. And then the next week the advice was something different. And it was like, I just want to be a part of the group so badly that I just wasn't saying those things, which is not like me. And so,
and have you, I'm glad that you just said that. Have you ever been in a situation, aside from what you just said, you said, I'm a grown ass woman and I should know better. And sometimes we forget that we're grown ass women and right.
We
and
do.
you feel like I could bring something into this equation right now, but I don't want to because I don't know who might be listening. But I'm going to just give a quick example of someone that I was very good friends with, and then kind of started blowing me off, and started becoming friends with this group of women, and I was kind of cast out by her and left behind, and it was very hurtful. And then all of a sudden, I was back in with her. And then I was out. And then I was in. And then I was out. And I was like, I, I just got to the point where had to realize what was going on. I didn't, I didn't get it. I didn't know that this was happening. I was just kind of going with the flow, and I wasn't getting angry or upset. But it wasn't until, like, I think the third, the third time. I know that's so sad.
Right. No, I do the
Right. But
same thing. I'm like, oh, well, you've done this to me now 18 times.
But 18 times. But it's true. I wasn't realizing it. And she was a really good friend of mine. And I guess I wasn't thinking that this is really her. This is really happening. And it took every fiber of my being to come to the realization that, wow, she really is an asshole. And it was hard for me to believe because she never acted that way. And then because my husband, we were all friends, he's the one that said something to me. And he was just like, she's taking you for a ride and this and the other thing. And I'm like, no, because she's so nice. Look at her. Look at how she behaves. Look at how she acts. And he's like, it's all a facade. She's full of shit. And then I started.
Isn't that crazy that sometimes it takes, because like my boyfriend's the one that pointed out to me that he's like, this woman that you are trying to be so hard to be friends with and be in her group, she's very fake.
Yes.
He's like, none of that is genuine, but it takes somebody else to point it out to us. And then we have to start thinking back. And so that's what I did. I thought back on all of the time I had spent, following her advice and doing these things and where it had gotten me. And I was like, you know what? He is absolutely right. She does not care about us.
Yes. And I'll tell you, you hit the head on the nail. Like I said, sometimes it's my sister. Sometimes it's the people that are closest to me that will point it out. And yes, I don't think it's that you or I didn't know it. I think maybe we knew it, but we just didn't care until someone really said, hey, this is how they're treating you. And all of a sudden it was like, it was forced onto you to make you think and realize. But it took me years because I didn't believe that this is really how she could be. And until I really started watching her and watching how she was behaving and said, this is not the same person that I know. And I realized that she was being phony and she was being a certain way, and she was very hurtful to me. And it took a long time. It really did for me to finally just say, enough is enough. It's almost like she stayed being friends with me just so she didn't have to deal with hearing, how I felt, or, she just, as she always says, she wanted, quote, peace in her life. But she would remain friends with me, but I still wouldn't be invited to parties. I still wouldn't be invited to this and to that. And I'm like, well, that's not a friendship. I'm sorry. You can have your parties and you don't have to invite me if you want to have a small gathering or this and that. But it was consistent. And that, I think I just needed, for some reason with this one person, I needed time to just come to that realization to the point where I was like, you know what? I am done. I don't even know why I allowed this for so long. And so I pretty much ended it in my own way and said, that's it. And Rhonda, my whole life, I have never had anybody where I had given as many chances to as this one person. Usually if you screw with me, it's gone. See ya, done. But with her, I don't know. It was really weird. It was like, I don't know. I think because we had known each other for such a long time, I just, kept giving her more and more chances, which is, I guess, what I do with the majority of the other people. It's like goodbye. But we're so close that, I always kept trying because I knew I would bump into her. I would see her and, let's just keep trying. But.
Right. And it's almost like a breakup.
Yeah.
When you like have someone that's that close, or, you have the same immediate like kind of circle of friends.
Right.
So it's almost like breaking up with someone, and then you have to, how do we navigate that?
Yeah, and it's not easy. I think it also has something to do with, we kind of all moved in at the same time and became really good friends very, very, very fast. And I think that I always felt that we always had that, despite, what the future had brought to us. I always felt that we still always had some kind of, connection, until I realized we didn't. And then I was like, oh, I'm so much better, of a person to not have her in my life, and it just didn't make sense anymore, to continue that way. But yes, I have to say, if it wasn't for others pointing it out to me, I wouldn't have really realized like what I was doing. And it kind of, that's why I was saying before that it kind of makes you grow, so that if something like that were to happen next time, I would actually prevent it from happening, because right,
Right.
because those red flags that I would ignore, uh-uh, I am not ignoring that anymore. Nope.
Right, right. So like the same thing, like because I was paying for business advice and I was being given contradictory advice, or I would be given advice and then the same person, another person would ask the same question and they would be given, different advice. And so I'm following this advice, and there were a couple, like, it led me to make some mistakes when I was promoting my business, because I'm not great with social media and stuff. And so I was relying on advice from this person. And it led me to make some mistakes, which I now have to go back and undo. And so now I'm very gun shy about, taking advice from people that I think are my friends on this, because I'm like, I don't know, like, are you just telling me this and you really don't know? Because I feel like that was a lot of part of it with this friendship. Um, and she's a nice person, for the most part. I just think that she kind of overextended herself as far as like trying to be friends with everyone. And I heard something the other day that says if you're friends with everyone, you're loyal to no one. And I think that was kind of the situation that I kind of ended up
Well,
in.
I bet it also helped you to grow and learn. I think that every time we go through this bullshit, because we're women and we run on our emotions, I think that we learn, and maybe little by little by little, we start to look for those things in other people to be aware of,
Yeah.
and like, exit, nearest exit.
Yeah. And I think that's what's happened, because, now when I just recently made a new friend, and I find myself, like critiquing her a little bit
Like
more.
treading water,
Like,
right?
right, yeah, I'm kind of treading water a
But
little
that's
bit.
okay. And you know what? She could be doing the same thing with you.
That is true. I mean, and that's fine. And if we don't end up staying friends, that'll be fine too. I think that's what my mom said to me when I started, because I said I've just like let all these people into my life. I said some of them I'm just like I don't really like them.
Mm.
I said really, like, I don't like them at the core of who they are. I said, and I've let them in my life because, like, oh, we all barrel race in the area together. And so I'm going to see them at barrel races. And so I just kind of let them be a bigger part of my life than just that,
Yeah.
that hour that I'm at the event. And my mom said, well, Rhonda, she just visited me recently. She said, you went, 30, what, we moved to Tucson when I was 38. She's like, you went 38 years without knowing those people.
Mm-hmm.
So she's like, I feel like you will be fine if you don't know them for the next 38 years.
Oh, Mom,
And
good advice.
I was like, oh, that is so true.
And you
Like,
know what? You need to put that in a pocket and use it for the next time,
yes,
and hold on to it.
yeah. Yeah, because you were fine before you met that person. So chances are you're going to be just fine
Yes.
without them.
I did.
And if they're causing you that much anxiety or
Right.
stress to where you don't really want to have a friendship with them, then really, what's the point?
What is the point? Especially in today's world, we're already stressed out as it is. We don't need any more. Did you ever notice? I just thought of this as you were talking, that we're so much better at giving advice and not following it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
right? So like your
Yeah.
mom gives you advice, right? And it sounds so great. Now let's say your mom is going through something like that.
No, no, she is. She has this group of friends, and they do like, I don't know what program they use, but they use some kind of app to where they can all talk at the same time together.
Oh,
And so they will, yeah, and they will have like, little conversations, and they have like weekly Zoom meetings where they can video chat, and they're all very involved in one another's lives, and they talk, almost daily. But there's like a girl in there that my mom really doesn't like. And I said, well, then just don't be in a group with that particular girl if you really don't like her. You can make a group with the other friends and just tell them, like, I really don't like her, and I don't want to be judgmental and rude about her, but I don't like it. But she can't do it
well,
because she doesn't want to upset the group.
and you know what? But that's exactly what I was talking about. We are really good at giving people
Yeah,
advice, but not following the same advice. So your mom
I
obviously
know.
is falls into
She
that
is
category,
doing it.
as we all do. We all fall
As
into
we
that
all do.
because look, I love giving advice. I love being that person to like be there and to listen and help you out in any way I can. But if that situation hit me, I would probably treat it the same way that you were treating it and would need someone to smack me in the ass and say, "Hey, snap out of
Right.
it," you know?
And that's the kind of advice that works for me. Like, I don't, for some reason, when people try to give me that subtle advice, I have to just be told.
Exactly.
I have to just be told,
And you,
because I will just continue to try to see the good in people, and I will
yes.
defend them. I will defend someone who's not being very nice to me to other people when they're like, well, you shouldn't be friends with them. You shouldn't put up with that.
You know what? When I was told by several people for several years, you need to stop being friends with this one person. You just need to stop. She's no good. I mean, they would point things out that I kind of knew of but wouldn't believe. You have got to stop because she's this way and she's that way and she really isn't a good person even though she touts herself as being. I would be like, "No, but she is really nice and she is that." "Well, if she's so
Right.
nice, look at how she's treating you." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, you're right." But I would need someone to actually say, "Hey, listen, you know,
You got to
you've
stop.
got to stop and let me tell you why. A, B, C, and D." And then I'd be like, "Ah, shit." I can't tell you how many times that would happen. And I'd be like, whatever. And then all it did was make me feel more like shit because I felt like, what's wrong with me? I'm a very strong woman, individual. Why have I not
Allow this.
allowed this? Thank you.
Yes.
And like I said, I realize that in the end, you're never going to find anyone exactly like you. And
No.
and
And would you want to?
no, I would not want to. I like
Right?
not being totally compatible, like the yin to your yang, and that's what
Right.
I think that's like the secret of any kind of relationship, whether an intimate relationship or a friendship. But the one thing that I have noticed, and I don't know if I mentioned this to you before, so I've been in Florida for 19 years, but I'm a New Yorker by heart. And there are so many people, Rhonda, that live here that are like a melting pot of different states, a lot from the Northeast. And yet it's been the hardest to maintain friendships in this state. And yet many of them are my people from, New York or the five boroughs. And I've been trying for years to figure out what in the hell is going on with people that they can't sustain healthy relationships or like what's really going on. And I still don't know. I've never really been able to find the answer. I mean, look, Florida is a transient state. A lot of people come, a lot of people go.
Right.
When the recession hit, a lot of people that we were friends with had to leave and sell their homes and move. And a lot of my son's friends had left as well. It was a really hard time, especially for my son, because most of his friends were moving. Of course, he made other friends, and this was years ago. But, at the time, it was hard. And I've still, to this day, tried to figure out, what is the deal with people? And then at first I thought, oh my God, is it me? And then I realized, no, it's not. There are so many people here that just they do the, oh, I would love to get together with you. And then when you try to reach out to them, they're like, what the fuck?
Right. They don't really want to get together
I
with you.
just, yes. And I think one little facet of the realization I came to was, like you said before, the cliques or the squads. And these older women, shame on you, who have these cliques and don't let anybody else in. Oh
Yes,
no.
and I just wonder what's going on. Like I felt like I left that behind in like
Hmm.
middle and high school, and I've never been a person to like exclude someone or tell somebody they're not welcome or anything like that. And maybe it's because I've moved around a bit and I've been the new person in my adult life, like I've moved states several times, and so I I know what it's like to be the new person. And so I would never do that to someone. And then it's so weird to me because since moving to Tucson, obviously I barrel race, and you would think that that's like a built-in friend group. You have the same interests, you're doing the same things on the weekends, but it's not.
Hmm.
They are so mean. I have had and it's not just Tucson. It's what I've learned. It's like the barrel racing community in general. And there are some lovely people in it, but they're like mean girls still. And I don't know what it is. And then as I talk to other people, like I talk to you and I talk to, like you just said about the friends there, it's like everywhere.
Mm.
It's in everything. Like no one really wants to genuinely be friends. And that's fine with me, but I don't like the, oh yes, we should get together sometime. We should do that.
I
Just don't
know.
say anything.
I love
You
that.
don't have to say anything.
I know. I think it's just kind of like how it is. But I will tell you, I did figure out in my own way the click thing. Okay.
Okay.
Well, it's one of two things. One, they just were never popular or were never part of a clique when they were in high school, maybe. And now they
Okay.
found a group of women where they can
Okay,
all,
so they weren't cool in high school. So now that they are cool as adults,
they're
they
gonna
want to.
they want to treat people the way in which they were treated, which is usually supposed to
That
be the
makes sense.
opposite. You're usually supposed to treat the people the way that you want to be treated. So if they
Right.
wanted to be popular or wanted to
To be
be
included.
included, remember how you felt when you were on the outside. Okay, so that's the first thing. And the second thing I came up with was many of the women that I know here in Florida and in New York, we had kids anywhere between, I would say, 20 and 28 years of age. And so we were all young moms, and we were all young moms in our 30s raising our children, in our 40s raising our children. And you find some commonality with some other women, like I said, if the kids are in sports, and you get to know someone, and then you get to know another person, and all of a sudden it becomes a clique, which at first is okay and it's nice, and you're not realizing that it's like a clique or a
Right.
squad. Um, but then what starts happening is women start living out their youth that they were not able to live out while they were raising their children. They spent their 30s and early 40s raising their children. They never went out. They never really, partied or did all these fun things. And so now that they're in their mid 40s or a little older, and they've made all these friends, they're all feeling the same way. They all want to go out with each other. They all want to have fun, but it becomes like an exclusive group. And many of these women, there's this one group of women that I was told about here in the town that I live in. And I remember hearing about them, that they all kind of like get dressed up and they go places with each other, and it's like the same group of people. And I think it's like a large group. I think I know only one person, but just know of the person. I'm not friends with her. But they would get together like for birthday parties and this and that, and it would always be the same group.
Oh.
And they would, but I mean, like they would have theme parties where they would have to like dress up for like certain themes. And I'm looking at this, and I'm looking at the same women, and I'm thinking to myself, you are all dressing like you think you should, like you're in your early 20s. And it was horrific to see how they were acting, um, what they were wearing. And I think it has a lot to do with the fact that they are trying to live their lives that they weren't able to live when they were raising their kids. Now, I was doing the same thing. I was raising my kid in my 30s and in my 40s, but I never dressed like some kind of a whore in my late 40s and acted in a certain way that many of these women act. And I just think it's like, these are the women who are so needy and didn't get what they needed. And now they searched for these other women so they can thrive off of one another. And that's why they form these cliques. They feed off of each other. But it doesn't mean that it's healthy. And it doesn't mean that everyone is friends. It means that many of them are talking behind each other's back.
I have found that too. So, I found like I said, the barrel racing group, and one of the women, and she just recently sat with me and just talked so badly about so many other people that are also her friends. I don't know them very well. I know them in passing. I don't get invited to their things or anything, but she sat there and just said terrible things about so many people. And I was like, I just kept looking at my boyfriend like, why is she sharing? First of all, why is she sharing this information with me? Because we are not close friends. And like, why is she talking about these people like this? And now I don't want to be friends with anyone in this group, because obviously if this is how you talk about your friends, heaven knows what you're saying about me.
Well, that's right. And that is a horrible personality flaw. I've never been one to talk really about anyone behind their back in an evil way.
No, me neither.
I don't like it. And
it makes me uncomfortable.
Yes.
It makes me very uncomfortable. I just kind of sit there and don't know how to respond. And later, of course, I think of like all the ways I should have responded to kind of make them know that what they're doing is not okay. But in the moment, I just kind of freeze.
Yeah, it's amazing to me how some people don't stop themselves from talking and like don't realize what they're doing. I too am very uncomfortable, and I don't partake in anything like that. When people start talking about other people, I either do what you do, freeze, but it's not so much freezing. It's just not wanting to take part in it. If you think of it that way, I'm not going to say anything, because I think what you're doing is wrong and it's horrible. And I go back to the same thing. Would you want people to treat you this way?
Right. And then I think when people are talking about other people like that, like she doesn't know me very well, I could just go back to that person and be like, oh, so-and-so said all of this. And then it could cause a whole big thing. Mm-hmm. And part of me thinks that that's what they want.
You never know. It's possible.
Because I just, of course I have opinions about people and things, but I don't share them,
you're smart.
I'm not just, right. Because then what happens is like, they come back and they say, oh, I heard you said this. So I've just come to, if I have something that's really bugging me that bad about someone, or they've done something that bad, I will just confront them directly.
And you know
this
what?
is really bothering me. I can't get it off my mind, and I need to talk this out with you.
Well, that is a very mature and correct way of doing things. I think that it's an easier way out doing it the other way. And I'll tell you, I know this group of women, not the same one. There's so many different cliques where I live. It's ridiculous. Anyway, and I'm not a cliquey person. I'm like, the more the merrier. Come on, what's your name? Hey, come on, you want to have a drink with us? And I actually feel very bad when there's someone on the outside, and that was me at one point with this one particular group. They were all talking about this, that, and the other thing, and they were all friends with each other, and I was kind of friends with them, but they were talking about when they went away and all the fun they had, and hey, what should we do next? And I'm just standing there like
right, because they're having a conversation that has nothing to do with you.
Right. But like I said, I was kind of friends with them, and I'm very uncomfortable. I feel very awkward. So I figured the only way I can figure something out is one of two things: either, kind of get into this conversation or just leave. And I didn't want to just turn around and leave. So I started saying, oh, you guys are going to do this? That sounds like fun. Hey, let me just tell you, when I went there, you guys have to check this out. And I acted like it didn't even bother me, but I was so pissed that people, right? That people were just, that people were such friggin' morons that I would literally look at each one of them for like a few seconds, then to the next one, then to the next one. And all I kept saying to myself is, do you not know what you're doing? Each one of you? I mean,
And I see this, and this is like the idealistic part of me that wants to think that they don't know what they're doing.
well,
But
I,
whether you know or not, you need to be aware if you invite someone. And it would kind of be like if I was catching up with, like, if my friend that I've known since I was 12 came to visit me in Arizona, we would probably talk about a lot of things that my boyfriend would have no clue about. And so, you know what I mean? Because I've just known her for so long.
right.
And so I would just, he would just know in advance, like, we're not trying to make you feel left out or uncomfortable. This is just our time catching up,
Of course.
but I mean, like, I wouldn't then invite, other people to come and listen to her and I talk about things that they had no clue about.
Right, exactly. But that's what I mean. I wonder if some of these women really know what's happening, and maybe they're uncomfortable, but they don't know how to get out of it, or they really don't give a shit. These women didn't give a shit. Whether they were aware didn't matter. They didn't care.
They didn't care if they were hurting anyone's feelings or making anyone uncomfortable.
Correct. And this is what was messed up. One of the women that is part of this group was not there. And I cannot tell you the things that they were saying about her. And this just happens to be the woman that I was friends with, I was talking about earlier. The things that some of these women were saying about her, I'm like, if I went back and I told her the things that they said, would she still be friends with them? I mean, I'm talking downright nasty things that they were saying about her and like mocking her. It was horrible. And aside from the fact that it was very cruel to do that in general, I thought to myself, why are you even friends then?
Right.
If you don't like her and you're saying all of these things about her, then why are you friends? Like, what is wrong with you women? Are you that desperate for friendship that you're willing to stay friends with people you don't like just so you can get out, just so you can do things? I can't do that. I can't be friends with people or go out with them and have a night out if I truly do not like them.
Right. And that's where I had found myself at a point where I had, like, kind of allowed all these people to claim friendship with me, but yet I didn't really, they would do things like that. And I was like, I really don't, like, I feel uncomfortable around them. I'm not having fun. I don't, they would plan like a girls' night, and I would just immediately start thinking of, how am I going to not go to that?
Right.
Like, what? And so then I was like, why are you even trying to be friends with these people then?
Well, you know what? I think that as women, we're so hard on ourselves no matter what. Sometimes I wish I was a man. I can watch men like go at it, and then 2 seconds later they're shaking hands and it's all forgotten.
Yep.
Right? I wish that sometimes women were not so catty and nasty, because some women could be really nasty, and it's very hard, I think, to find women nowadays that are free of that. Although I will say, I think that the older women, and by older I mean like in their 50s, have kind of gone through, what I've gone through, and are kind of where I'm at, where they're like, feeling you out and looking for any red flags. But I think for the most part, no matter what age women are, women can still be catty. And I think I don't think I said this. My mom lives in a community like mine, and she's more in like a country club living kind of place. So they have like, dining. So a lot of people can like get together and play cards, and, well, not now, but they would play cards, or they would have luncheon. She lives on a golf course, and so she would play golf. And there are women that are in their 80s that are still part of cliques and still talk behind other women's backs. And I'm telling you, it's that feeling of power, like they feel elite and have this kind of power hungry feeling to they're hungry for the attention and hungry to just make sure that they are in control of just these friends. And I don't know. I just think it's very sad. And I think that there need to be more people in this world like you and me.
It is very sad. And, sometimes I get so excited because I'll meet someone and I'll be like, oh, I'm going to have a new friend and it's going to be great. And then I just find out that they're part of a clique as well. And
I know. And that's why you just have to look, if it's early in and you find out about that, those are those red flags. You can make your own decisions before you get hurt. And I'm not saying that every woman is like this. I'm sure that there have been times where I could have been nasty or not wanted to be friends with someone for whatever reason when I was younger. But now, no way. I don't care, what you look like. I don't care what you represent. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care. If
yeah,
you are good to me and you're a good person in general and you don't have an agenda, come on in.
that's exactly it. Like, I, you know, I don't really care about much. I'm pretty easygoing, but I just can't handle the gossiping and the fakeness. If you're just a good, genuine person, then I'll be friends with anybody.
Exactly. It's not like it was, I was probably very superficial in high school.
Oh, I'm sure I
I,
was as well.
yeah, and I know that I grew up with a lot of girls that were very superficial. And I'm sure at one point in time, I wanted to, be that person and be like, hey, look at me and I'm popular and this and that. But I actually, I don't know. I don't think I was ever like that. I'm sure that there was a point in time where I might have just been like, oh, I want to have X amount of friends. I want to have tons and tons of friends. Actually, no, I was like that when I moved here. I we all became friends with one another up and down the street because like I said, we all moved in together. We were all closing and bumping into each other at the title companies. And I think everyone was so eager to meet one another and start a whole new life because we all were having these homes built for us and waiting for them to be built. And then they were done. It's like you couldn't wait until, oh, who's my neighbor? And oh, who's my neighbor? But I think for the most part we were all eager. And I do remember when we moved in, I was very eager to meet everyone, make a lot of friends for my son. And we did. It was just how it was, but it fizzled out. It all fizzled out because you got to know all of these people so fast. And you're like, no, yes, maybe, no.
Right.
It's just what happened. And now it's 19 years later. And it's like, okay, it went from like 100 friends down to like five.
But like, so at certain points, like, of course, when my son was in the midst of playing so many sports, and we had all, like you said, like all the parent friends that they were the same age, and so of course our families were doing things all the time. And now, of course, I don't really stay in touch with many of those people. There are a few, that we stay in touch, and um, but for the most part, they're all gone. Like you said, they're just, there's like five or so maybe that you stay in touch with, and but I almost like it better now.
Well, I think that I'm really happy with a smaller group of friends, and I'm more comfortable with the fact that I've learned a lot, and now I know that like I'm not stuck. I guess I always felt like I was always stuck, like I had to be friends with this person, or I had to accept this and I had to accept that. But now I'm just more like I don't care how many friends I have. I don't even care about, like we said earlier, about going out on the weekends. Uh, I, I'm very comfortable in my skin now, and I don't have nearly as many insecurities as I used to.
Do
And I
you
think,
do you think that that is part of it? As you become more comfortable with yourself and more secure with yourself, you don't need that, like, that blanket of all those friends.
oh, well, I mean, absolutely. I think, wait, I think that as I've gotten older and, I've been hurt, I've been sad, I've been happy. I think that your brain at some point just learns to adapt in a different way, you know?
Yeah.
And perhaps I think that we're all allotted a certain amount of hurt. And then when we get to that point, you're done. And you come to that realization of, all right, And it's sometimes, Rhonda, I have to tell you, it's so quick. Like sometimes if something happens that might have happened 10 years ago where I would get upset about it now, in a heartbeat, I don't care. But yet with other things, I might care. Like that party that was down the street for like, a half an hour, I was not happy. But now, I mean, with certain things, yeah, I think that as you get older, like my mom said, you get wiser. You've been through the gamut of shit and emotions. I think that you just kind of learn not to care anymore about certain things. And I think it's so much easier on us because I think as women, we put ourselves through the gamut. We can really mess ourselves up and get very upset about things and let it eat and eat away at us. And so it's so much better when you don't have that anymore. So yeah, I think it does. I think it comes with age, and I think it also comes with people like, your boyfriend. Did you say, is he your boyfriend or your
He's
husband?
my
Your
boyfriend.
fiance.
Yeah, he's my
Okay.
boyfriend. Yeah.
Um, or my husband or friends or family saying, "Hey, listen, this is what's happening." And let me tell you. And then when you realize it, it's like, oh God. And sometimes you have that moment where you just kind of are on the outside looking in instead of being on the inside looking out, and you can see yourself, and
Yes.
you have that brief moment of like clarity. I think where you're just like, oh my God, have I really been allowing this? What an idiot. And then it almost just kind of connects. I don't know. Does that sound weird?
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, like I didn't realize that I never felt, I mean, I knew that I didn't feel quite like I fit in the group, but I didn't realize like how badly they were treating me, or, the things that like I was doing for this group of friends, that they were not doing,
Mm,
reciprocating for me. And I mean, I know friendship is like give and take, it's not always going to be 50-50. Sometimes it's 90-10, and sometimes,
mm-hmm.
but when it's always 90-10 in the direction of them, that's when it becomes a problem. Um, and that's what Mark pointed out to me. He said, it's always you go 90 and they go 10 in the
Mm,
friendship. He's like, and that's just not fair to you.
I agree. But you know what? He's the one that pointed it out.
He is. I couldn't see it. I couldn't see it. I knew
See?
that sometimes I knew that I was feeling frustrated a little bit with some of the friendships in that group. But I couldn't kind of pinpoint why.
But what about when you do get it and you do see it and you do know, but you still have that part of you that's not ready to let go? And that's how I was with this woman. I kept giving it another chance and giving it another chance, and
Well,
uh, without realizing that I was actually hurting myself during the process.
no, I did. I kept giving. I tried to point it out. I said something about how, um, friendship should be a little more equitable. I pointed this out with this group of people and said that, and kind of told them how I was feeling. And several people were like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I was so caught up in my own, bullshit that I didn't realize that, my actions were making you feel this way. And they apologized. And then,
Oh.
but then nothing changed,
Because
like, like,
they can't,
right.
they don't know how,
They
probably.
apologized, but then nothing changed. And of course, the
Mm.
people that I met in that group that I'm still friends with, they're wonderful and still doing the same things that they've always been doing. So I don't know. I feel like even though I pointed it out and some of them apologized, maybe they're just incapable of.
Maybe they are incapable. And you know what? You never know what's going on behind closed doors either. You can have someone that's acting a certain way, but yet maybe they're being abused by their husband, or maybe they're doing drugs, or maybe they're sick, or maybe they're just dealing with a whole lot of other family shit. But then when they see you, they're trying to keep it all together and act a certain way around you and other people.
I think
And
that's why.
sometimes
I think that's
it
why I
could be
give
a
so
cry
many.
for help.
I think, yeah, and I think that's why I give so many chances, because I don't
Me
know
too.
what's going
Right.
on.
Exactly. And that's why we keep doing that to ourselves. But you know what? There's something that we both, I think, or I don't know about you. I should say that. With me, I have always had other people come first. It was
Oh yeah.
never, I was never a priority to myself, especially, and you can relate, having a child,
Hmm.
raising the child. All of a sudden, my husband became number two or number three, and my son was number one. My dogs were number two. My husband was number three, but I was number four. But you never realize that in the middle of raising your child and working or whatever it is that you're doing, just living your life. And when my son was finally grown and a man, I don't, Rhonda, I don't remember how I realized it, or if someone mentioned it to me, or if I read it in a book or heard it on a podcast. But let's say I heard it somewhere. I heard that you are supposed to make yourself number one and a priority. And then
Yeah, I've heard
I
that
was
as
like,
well.
but then I was like, wait a minute, what? I'm supposed to come first before my son, before my husband,
Um,
before my dogs?
so someone used the airplane analogy with me. They used, when the oxygen mask dropped down, you have to put your own on first before you can help anyone else.
Right.
And that's how it was pointed out to me, was that if
You can't help others if you don't help yourself.
right, and that if your cup is empty, you can't just keep pouring it out into other people because you have nothing to give. But that had to be pointed out to me, and it still has to be pointed out to me frequently, because you forget as a wife and a
You do.
mom, and you love your pets, and I have to, and
You
that's
do forget.
right, you forget.
And
And that's why I had to force myself on Saturday. I had a headache for probably like 5 days, and it just
I saw on Facebook, yeah, I
and
saw
it's
your
just like a
post.
small little nagging headache. But waking up first thing in the morning, and the first thing is like, oh God, my head hurts again. I had to be like, look, on Saturday, I'm going to drink hot drinks and read my book and watch my frivolous shows, and no one's going to bother me.
Right. But you realized that you needed to be a priority, and you're absolutely right. We completely forget, because I think, again, as women, we are the comforters, we're the ones that are always there to comfort and make things better, and the rescuers. But it wasn't until my son was grown that I had heard this, and I was like, oh my God, I I am not number one in my life. And I have never like gotten my nails done or say, I'm going to go get a massage, or I'm going to go out to lunch by myself, or I'm going to get myself a coffee. I never did that. So when my son was grown, I was like, God damn it, I'm getting a massage. And I did. I went and I walked in and I was like, I need a massage. And I got myself a massage. And I walked out not only feeling so refreshed, but also feeling so guilty that I actually did something for myself. It was the weirdest feeling that I actually just said, I'm going to do something for myself. But I have learned, and I'm learning even more, that I do need to make myself a priority, and I do need to be number one. Like you said, that if you don't, then think about everything else that's going to happen. And so that, I think, is another really hard thing for maybe some women to do, to make themselves a priority.
I think it is hard for some women, and then other women, I think it just comes naturally.
That's good.
So and maybe it's just because, like, maybe they were more well adjusted as a child. I don't know.
Who the hell knows?
Like, maybe that's something that they were taught the whole time growing up, because it wasn't modeled for me, and it wasn't taught for me growing up. I lived with my grandparents a lot of the time when I was growing up, and my grandmother did everything. My grandfather worked, but everything at home, taking care of everybody, doing everything in the house, that was always all her. And so, she didn't have me time, or her time to, because we were always like, what's for dinner, what's this, what's that, I need laundry,
Exactly.
and so she never had that time. And so I think about that, like, that was never modeled for me growing up. So how would I know? It's something I had to learn on my own.
Exactly. And I'm going to be honest with you. If I knew somebody who did make themselves a priority or number one, I would be like, you're so selfish.
Yes.
Like, what's wrong with you?
I was
right.
gonna
And
say that.
It reminds me of and I don't even know if I said this on one of the other podcasts, but terms of endearment, when Deborah Winger was saying goodbye to her boys while she was dying in the hospital. And she said, I think to her oldest boy, Tommy, she said, I know you love me and I love you even more than I love myself. And I remember that because I remember being a kid watching that saying, what do you mean more than you love yourself?
Right. Because
What are you talking?
before you
Right?
have kids, you're kind of like, you don't understand that as much.
Yeah, I don't know. What I do know is we definitely have to take that into consideration. And if it's not easy for us to make ourselves a priority, then meet it halfway and at least start doing something for yourself more often, even if it's just once a week, like you just did with the headache. It shouldn't take a headache for you to say, I'm going to rest. You know, you should be able to say, you know what, I'm going to read a book today, or I'm going to hang with my horses today, or whatever it is, to make time for yourself to do it. And now that I have so much more time because I'm not working like I used to, and COVID, I have too much time for myself. And now I'm like, what am I supposed to do with all this time? You know, but you know, you just have to, but I have a puppy. So I just, got him a week ago. So he's been, he's just taking up a lot of time, but it's wonderful. But, I think it's important that we all kind of take time for ourselves and stop, giving a shit so much about other people and what they think, and not wait until we're older. And I'll tell you, if I was able to get in touch with the younger Julie, I would be giving her this advice and telling her, don't give a shit as much, because it's going to ruin your life if you're, so sad and so upset all the time.
You're always going to be caring about what other people think.
Yeah. The thing is I never really cared about what other people thought about me. It was just that I was always too sensitive and getting hurt. And I allowed myself to feel that way. And like I said, it's, when you're angry or you're sad, and that those feelings you get inside your body, they're horrible, awful feelings that eat away at you. And those are the feelings that you want to not have.
Right.
I have to tell you something. I'm so happy that we literally just, as you guys that are listening, obviously Rhonda and I were just talking off the cuff today, and we wound up having our own little therapy session that we don't even have to pay for. This has been great.
That's right.
And I hope that for those of you that are listening, maybe we touched on a subject that's important to you as well. Obviously, mostly women, but I don't know. I kind of feel like a little better about life, and I feel a little less heavy, and I don't know, after this conversation. I think it's good to know that there are other women out there that are feeling the same way that you're feeling, and also are not afraid to talk about it. I think that people need to give a shit less about the stigma. Oh, I can't talk about this, or I can't feel this way, because we're all human, and we all have certain feelings about things. And stop being so shitty to everybody, right? Just be kind to everyone, and just realize that everyone's human and everyone has feelings, and you don't realize how much you could be hurting somebody else just with actions more than words, don't you think?
Yeah, no, yeah, definitely. Because, you can say the words, like the group that, several of them apologized to me for how they were treating me, but then they continued to do the same thing. And it was at that point that I was like, well, this isn't working for me.
Oh, well, that was the best thing that you could do for yourself.
Right.
Is realize that and bow out gracefully, because obviously you're not going to change other people. And so you just need to look out for number one and try and avoid, I guess, all of those horrible feelings that we can get and do to ourselves. And like I said, I'm late in the game, but at least I've caught it and I'm able to, deal with it better now. So, well, anyway, this was a lot of fun. And, we're going to have to figure out a topic for next week, but I'm sure whatever we decide on, it'll be a lot of fun, because I'm having a great time.
Me too.
All right. So listen, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. And why don't you tell everybody how they can find you?
Everyone can find me on Instagram at the Rhonda Marie. And there's actually a link tree in that profile that gives you everything to my podcast and blog. Everything is just titled the Rhonda Marie, like whether it's the blog or the podcast. I try to keep it universal across the board.
but your podcast is An Accidentally Beautiful
Right.
Life.
Just the
Right.
link is the Rhonda Marie, because An Accidentally
Oh,
Beautiful
right.
Life
Okay.
was so long. But yes, and it's the only one. So if you just search wherever you get your
It
podcast,
is.
if you search An Accidentally Beautiful Life, you'll find me, because it's the only one.
Perfect. And with me as well, you can find me on social media with Nothing But Julie. And that's the same name for the podcast. And feel free to, give us a review and subscribe. And until next week, have a wonderful rest of your week. And thanks so much for joining us.